Welcome to Midweek Mysteries, and thank you for being here. I'm your host, Nick Ryan. I'd like to start the show by saying thank you to our listeners and, of course, our patrons. All of your support makes the podcast possible. As always, we enjoy giving a personal shout-out to our newest Patreon supporters at the beginning of our full-length episodes, which air every Sunday. So, if you're a new patron, be sure to tune in. Today's first Midweek Mystery comes to us from Amy. Amy's story is called Haunted Horses. Amy says, "Hi Nick, Amy from the UK here. I'm fairly new to your podcast after my brother introduced it to me. I wanted to share a story with you which happened to my auntie and uncle, and I've got their permission to share their story with you. This happened around 30 years ago. My auntie and her husband were living with her mother, my grandmother, in Mortimer, Berkshire, UK, which is yards down the road, and they lived near a memorial ground. One evening, her and her husband went to bed, and she woke up to the sound of her mum having an asthma attack. As she went to sit up to shout out to check if she was okay, she felt like she was pinned down on the bed. As she looked, she saw two men dressed in cavalry outfits pinning her down, and all she could do was move her head. She then looked at the end of the bed to see men in cavalry riding horses through the bedroom. She tried shouting and moving to wake her husband up, but he couldn't hear her. She just had to wait for it all to be over. The following morning she asked her mum if she had an asthma attack during the night, to which her mother replied yes. She then proceeded to tell her what had happened, and she put it down as a dream. The next day, she was with her mother when her husband walked down looking white as a ghost. They asked him if he was okay, to which he replied, "No, I had a scary dream last night. I dreamt I was being pinned to the bed by two cavalrymen, and all these horses were running through our bedroom, and I was trying to shout for you to help, but you couldn't hear me, and I couldn't move to wake you up." My auntie, who was very skeptical, turned to her mother and said, "Stop winding me up, you two. You're not funny." Her husband looked at her confused. Her mother replied, "I haven't seen him to tell him about your dream." My auntie looked at my uncle, who now looked even paler. "Did she tell you I had that dream too?" My uncle shook his head, and then began to get upset. They both had the same experience on 2 separate nights, and neither of them knew about it until my uncle had told her, and still to this day, my uncle refuses to talk about it. A couple nights later, while watching TV in their room with their ridgeback dog, the dog looked toward their window and started growling. They muted the TV, and then could hear someone walking down the gravel drive toward their bungalow. It was very late at night, so they thought it was odd. As their room was right next to the front door, the dog jumped off the bed and ran to the front door, still barking and growling. As they looked outside the window, they could see someone, like a figure of a man, standing outside their window. A little freaked out, they decided to let the dog out of the house in case it was an intruder, but as soon as the dog was out, no one was there. The dog was running up and down the small road that only a handful of houses were on, but no one was there. Even if someone was there, at the speed from seeing the person outside their window to them running outside, you would have clearly seen them walking or running off. My uncle then wondered if it was connected to their experiences a couple days prior. Even asking my uncle and aunt about this story and sending it over to you, my uncle still gets teary and his body gets covered in goosebumps. After some research, the street they lived on was said to have been built on top of a burial ground from the British Civil War that took place in 1642 to 1645. Sorry if this is long, but it's a story that I've always found absolutely fascinating, and I myself have a couple of experiences. Let me know if you'd like me to send them over. Take care, Amy. Our last midweek mystery of the day comes from PK. PK's story is called Humanoid on the Hill Wasn't Human. PK says, "Hey Nick, I always wanted to tell my story on here, and I've been a huge fan for I think at least a year now, if not more. I was home with my brother, and we were about 15 to 18 years of age at the time. We were playing some good old online video games, and back in the summer of 2009, it was somewhat newer then, so we were excited to just be the two of us alone to gorge on staying up late, with pizza and munchies, free to play as long as we'd like. as the family went camping, so we just did that. The game only had a few minutes in between matches, and it was online, so you can't pause online games, and we lived on the outskirts of town, with no neighbors, for a few miles out on the countryside setting, with a hill behind our house. So after a lot of soda and energy drinks to keep us hyped for the games, it led to a lot of washroom breaks. But the washroom was all the way upstairs and across the big 2-story house, so we didn't bother or mind just stepping outside the door, which was only a few feet away. So me and my bro both ran before the next match began on our game to relieve ourselves, and when I came in before him, so we didn't go at the same time, he quickly came in the house and said, "Hey bro, it looks like someone is up on the hill behind the house." I looked up, confused, and to not look worried, I said, "Oh wow, let's go take a look." Being the big brother, and it was just the two of us, I naturally had to macho it up, and I marched out to look out there, at what or who it was. As I looked up to see a bright moon behind this silhouette of a humanoid figure, up on top of the hill behind our house, you could pretty much see a full-body figure, as the hill wasn't that big, maybe 40 to 50 foot tall and steep. There was a tall wild berry bush, maybe 10 foot tall. The figure was only about 2 foot smaller in height to this bush, and it was standing there, as if it was looking right at us. It didn't seem human at all to me. Its midsection was long, but the legs were somewhat short, and it didn't have a low waist like a human, and it bent more in the middle of its long midsection of its body. Its head was small and square, almost like it didn't have a neck. My bro said, "What is that?" as he pointed at it, and when he did, it looked like it jolted back, and as it turned around to run, I could see its arms swing, and they were super long. Not muscular in appearance, but its fist was bigger, more like a paw, kind of a Popeye style, but with straight lines with no bulging muscles that we could see on its arm. But it was night, and we didn't see any details, just the silhouette of it about 50 yards in the distance. It ran fast, though almost like it sunk into the ground, but I saw it make a turn and a running motion. When it disappeared out of sight, me and my brother ran inside and locked the doors. We were somewhat shook, but not really, as it was more curiosity. To this day, though, I get this feeling. What if that figure is still out there, or if they are still watching? Luckily, it was already late in the night, so we didn't have to kill much time before morning to come, and games helped us keep our minds off of it. To this day, I believe it was extraterrestrial in nature, but that's just my guess. That's my story, Nick, and thanks for having a beautiful platform for me to share it. I feel great that I got to let it out. If anyone has seen anything similar, please tell me your story. I'd love to hear it. Later on, I looked on YouTube for anything similar, and there was a video entitled Super Funky Flexible Matrix-Style Morphing Aliens in Mexico. I know it sounds ridiculous now, as the title must have changed from before, but I'm glad I can still find it on YouTube after all these years. If you fancy a peek, it's somewhat similar to what I believe I saw. I'll leave it up to you, Nick. As we come to the end of this edition of Midweek Mysteries, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for tuning in and supporting the podcast, and a special thank you to Amy and PK for writing in and sharing their experience with all of us. Until next time, I hope you all have a safe and healthy rest of the week, and we'll see you back here on Sunday for our next episode. If you or someone that you know has witnessed something unexplainable, and you'd like to have your story shared on the podcast, please contact me at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com, or visit paranormalmysteriespodcast.com and click on the Tell Your Story link. Please remember, no matter how insignificant or outlandish you believe your experience may seem, I'd like to hear about it. You can also connect with us by joining our forum and by following us on social media. All of our contact information can be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support the podcast, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your friends. If you're interested in taking the next step and becoming a patron, you can visit patreon.com/paranormal mysteries. Benefits include ad-free episodes and early access to select shows. New episodes of the Paranormal Mysteries Podcast are produced every Sunday, with a new Midweek Mysteries airing every Wednesday, and they're available on all of your favorite podcast apps. From all of us at the Paranormal Mysteries Podcast, Thank you so much for listening, and remember, don't wait for the unknown to come to you. Get out there and find it.